1st on line 24, you have including the governor's mansion within the list of state-owned buildings over which the Office of Capitol Police has jurisdiction. So that was Senator Polk's bill, which has been included in this. And then if you'll go over to lines 83 through 86, it adds language stating the Department of Public Safety shall have jurisdiction relative to the enforcement of all laws of the state of Mississippi within the boundaries of the city of Jackson, Mississippi. And then there's conforming language throughout the rest of the bill that essentially says the same thing, which is that we're not expanding the Capitol Complex Improvement District. We're merely stating that the Capitol Police Force would have jurisdiction outside of what's currently the CCID and expanded that all the way to include the entire city of Jackson. So that's what the two prongs of this bill accomplishes as it is written. And I'll be happy to recognize Commissioner Tyndall if you would like to speak to this bill.
Certainly, I feel like y'all saying a lot of work that's going in the Capitol Police the last couple of years. The job expanded the role of Capitol Police to the extent this body, governor decided we should expand that, whether it's the district or not. Here expanded, and I want us to go beyond our district lines and doing the work outside this area that requires additional officers. But I will say there's also times when they're pursuing areas, and it will be a benefit to be able to chase them into other areas and still have jurisdictions in those areas too. That is also a benefit.
Now, there are no dollars in this bill. Obviously, that's a question that I received from some people. So this merely would expand jurisdiction and power. And if this were to pass, of course, you would take the issue of appropriations up with the Appropriations Committee as to whatever additional resources you would need to accomplish this task. Is that right?
That's correct. City, state, you have jurisdiction. Sheriff's all the city. The sheriff has jurisdiction within the city. Really, we're just doing that same thing. So
and that brings up a point. I'm glad you mentioned lines 94 through 99. It does basically mandate cooperation between all the parties, states, the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety and City of Jackson shall enter into a memorandum of understanding by January the 30th of 2024, which will be mutually beneficial to both parties, detailing the expectations of both parties. The execution or failure to execute such a memorandum will not affect this grant of jurisdiction, but it is the legislative intent, obviously, for you all to work collaboratively and not, converse to each other.
And I will say, contrary to what you said up here, media. We know Chief Davis just going to have there working. We're doing it right now. We would provide assets for the license plate reader and they provide us access to the crime scene. We'll have working. So we have them working. But in the beginning, that is correct.
Gotcha. All right, Senator Barnett for questions.
Yes, just one quick question. I think what y'all trying to do is a good thing. Question is, are going to address the issue in regards to where you may be or where your officers may be at a time of arrest, chase, or whatever, is to make sure that there's no conflict between yourself and the Jackson Police Department, because I don't want it ever to get to be a war of, who should be here, who shouldn't be here, and those type of things. So are those things being considered while you all are working on memorandum of understanding?
Yes, sir. They have been addressed originally. We're trying to build up to meet the need. In the beginning, we did not have that. Over time, we are now responding to call JPD might show up first, in case over. But we are working together. And the cooperation, JPD in that aspect.
And also, you know, I know that JPD or the city of Jackson is not fond of the idea of car chase. So if are you all working through that as well, you know, to make sure that everything is agreed upon by both departments so that one department is not, or it appears to be acting independently of the other one, about both of them having the same duties and the same responsibilities in the areas that are being patrolled?
Just from our perspective, we're gonna chase criminals in the bounds of this law.
Conversely, is there a no pursuit policy in the city of Jackson on JPD?
That is one that's gonna, like, I know there have been incidents.
Gotcha. All right, other questions for me or for Senator Judge and Commissioner Tindall? Any of those? All right,
Motion, title sufficient, do pass.
you've heard the motion, title speech do pass, committee sub, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
No.
The ayes have it, I believe. Okay, the ayes have it. All right, next bill is, and thank you, Commissioner Tindall, we appreciate it. The next bill is House Bill 1125, and I will call that one up. Let me go over sort of a breakdown of what this bill does, which may answer some of your questions. I've been studying this over the weekend since it was assigned to us late Friday. So let me just give you a quick breakdown and then we'll take questions and let anyone speak that would like to speak on the bill before we vote. So section 1, of course, is the naming of the act, the Regulated Experimental Adolescent Procedures or REAP Act. Section 2 deals with the key definitions. Obviously, in this context, sex means the biological indication of male or female. Cross-sex hormones, lines 47 through 53, means testosterone given to females and estrogen given to males. Lines 56 through 77 deals with gender reassignment surgery, meaning medical or surgical services which alter or remove physical or anatomical features, excluding circumcision, which are typical for an individual sex. This section specifically names procedures, including liposuction, voice surgery, and mastectomies. Line 78 through 82 deals with gender transition, meaning the process of identifying with a different sex. Lines 83 through 110 deals with the definition of gender transition services. This includes prescribing puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and gender reassignment surgery. Specifically, and this answered a question I had about this bill, this section specifically excludes some procedures related to medically verifiable disorders related to sex development, such as hermaphrodites, procedures related to the treatment of a disease, a mastectomy for breast cancer, and circumcision. So those questions, which are good questions, are answered in lines 83 through 110, and there are exceptions in this bill for those procedures that are medically necessary. Section 3, lines 129 through 131 prohibits providing gender transition procedures to a person under 18 in the state of Mississippi. Lines 132 through 136 prohibits aiding and abetting providing gender transition procedures to a person under 18. And there is an exception for speech protected under federal and state law in this section, and section 3. Section 4 then prohibits public funds provided by the U.S. or state governments to be used to provide gender transition procedures to a person under 18. Lines 145 through 151 prohibits healthcare facilities owned by the state or local and county government and positions employed by the state or local and county governments from providing gender transition procedures. Lines 152 through 156, amounts paid by an individual or entity for gender transition procedures or as premiums for healthcare coverage that includes coverage for gender transition procedures is not deductible for state income tax purposes. Lines 157 through 166 authorizes revoking license for physicians or other healthcare professionals who violate the section. Lines 167 through 173 provides a cause of action with an opportunity to receive compensatory, punitive, damages, injunctive relief, declaratory relief, and any other appropriate relief. Lines 174 through 181, there is a 30-year statute of limitations for any person claiming a violation except a child subjected to a gender transition service, which also has a 30-year statute of limitations specifically for them. Lines 187 through 189 provides attorney's fees for the prevailing party. Lines 190 through 196 provides that the Attorney General has the power to bring action to enforce compliance with this act or to intervene in another action. Then section 6, there's lines 533 through 535, conforming language to the provisions of the act prohibiting income tax deductions for healthcare coverage, allowing gender transition procedures. Section 7 provides that Medicaid shall not reimburse or provide coverage for gender transition procedures for a person under 18 years of age. Section 8, lines 658 through 659, conforming language to the provision in the act allowing healthcare professionals' licenses to be revoked when they violate this act. Section 9, lines 827 through 828, conforming language to the provision in the act allowing healthcare professionals' licenses to be revoked when they violate this act. Section 10, lines 860 through 864, conforming language to exclude gender transition procedures from the definition of the practice of medicine. Section 11, conforming language which provides that health insurance coverage is not required to provide coverage for gender transition procedures for a person under 18. Section 12, starting in line 924, providing that health insurance coverage for state employees shall not include reimbursement for gender transition procedures for a person under 18. Section 13 carves out an exception. The statute providing immunity when an employee of the state political subdivision is acting within the scope of his or her employment for this procedure. Section 14 carving out the exception to the statute providing immunity for healthcare providers or facilities acting in good faith and in accordance with generally accepted healthcare standards. And then section 15 is a severance clause, and the bill is effective upon passage. That is a not so brief, but I think important explanation of the various sections of this bill. I'll be happy to try and answer any questions. Senator Simmons.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment.
You have any questions first?
No question.
Senators Wiggins, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Sure.
There's a lot of language in this bill criminalizing doctors. Have we discussed anything with the State Medical Association? Has any doctors been asked about this?
I have not had those conversations. I know this bill originated in the House. They took it up in the House, sent it over here. The Lieutenant Governor signed it to this committee on Friday afternoon. So I've done my due diligence to try and understand what the bill does at this point. But I understand your question. I have not had this conversation.
Well, I mean, usually when we're dealing with in public health or whatever, and it's dealing with doctors and the state medical and all that, we inquire about them, we talk to them, we figure that out. And so I personally have not heard anything from any doctors on this. And this bill is bringing that into question. Also, I had a question about 132 to 136.
Okay.
And this is, I assume this is criminal in nature. Is this a criminal provision?
Let me see here.
Knowingly engage in conduct that aids or abets. What is,
There's no criminal,
okay,
and the drafting attorney can correct me if I'm wrong. There are no criminal penalties in here. The penalties would include if you're a healthcare professional losing your license.
okay,
And then if you're not, if you're just a person aiding and abetting, you can be sued for damages, but those are all civil in nature.
okay. You answered my question on that.
No, that's a great question. I asked it myself, so that's,
Okay, so the
That's-
aiding and
yeah.
abetting is only applying on of a civil nature.
yes, sir.
Okay. And so the criminal in the doctor can lose his or her license,
No criminal
but there's
penalties.
no criminal penalties
No.
that outside of what is already there.
Yes,
whatever.
sir.
All right, thank you. That
Mhm.
cleared it.
Sure. I think there was another hand maybe I saw somewhere. Anybody? All right, Senator Simmons, you had an amendment you would like to be recognized for.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
You're
I move-
recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I move the table.
Well, that's not an amendment. Do you have an amendment you would like to make? I mean, you're welcome to for the other as well, but I just want to make sure we know what we're doing.
But let me try the motion first.
Okay, fair enough. All right, would you like to speak on your motions table?
I mean, this is just a lot. I know I've gotten calls from several of my doctor friends who are concerned that we are entering into the whole field of medicine and trying to tell doctors what they can and what they cannot do. And I really would love if we would just continue to look at the issue. And of course, we come here every year, Mr. Chairman, and we can look at it during the summer, call committee meetings on it during the summer and study the issue, get doctors involved, more people involved, and come up with something that everybody can live with. So right now, and I understand it's a killing motion, but that is my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Would anyone else like to speak on the motion? Senator Barnett?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Feel the same way as Senator Simmons, and I've had phone calls in regards to that too. And doctors basically saying that why are we treating this any different than we do plastic surgery? Surgery is also altered and changed appearances, everything else. So why should this particular thing be treated any different than that? Now, then they're going to be afraid to do any of those type of things because someone maybe used the law or interpreted differently. Them utilize it too, and it just was a cosmetic. What this is cosmetic. What else? Thank you.
I would like to speak against the motion, and I will say I differ with you, although I respect your opinions certainly, and will vote and let the majority will control here. But what we're talking about, just to bring it back around, are children under 18. So we're talking 0 to 17 years of age here, and we're talking about these kids that can't make these decisions for themselves. You can't, as an 8-year-old, walk up into the doctor's office and say, please change my sex from A to B or B to A. And if there are parents out there, alleged parents who are doing these things to their children, making life-changing decisions, some of which are irreversible. I've done quite a bit of research over the weekend, a deep dive and crash course. You should do the same if you have some concerns about this bill. The pictures of what is done to these children, many of whom later go on to wish their parents had not done this to them. And then there's very little that can be done to reverse at that point, once parts are missing and you can't put them back. Let's just leave it at that. So I'm not talking about someone 18 years of age or older, they can do whatever they want to do. We're talking about minors who have no control over what is done to their bodies because some parent decides, oh, I think he ought to be a she or she ought to be a he. That's what we're talking about here. So it is not just like plastic surgery in all due respect. We're not talking about removing a mole or changing a hairline or doing a breast reduction or any of these sorts of things. We're talking about the total and complete removal of parts that God gave you and trying to reverse that. We're talking about anti-puberty hormone drugs that keep people from developing. We're talking about all sorts of things, many of which cannot be reversed as a minor. And now you're saying that it's just a mere choice or it's a cosmetic type deal? No, I differ with you on that. And I would challenge you, if you feel that way, to do a little research, do a little Google searching this afternoon. You'll be surprised at what is taking place. And unfortunately, a lot of it is being driven by money. There's a lot of money to be made by these industries. And whereas there used to be about 7 of these across the country, a few years later, they're now over 300 across the country. And they're churning out these transitions and they're making a lot of money off of this. And it's sad. It's very, very sad. But again, you're recognized for your motion. Are there anyone else that would like to speak? Senator Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask a couple questions. I realize you don't practice medicine, but is it your understanding that there have been carve outs or consideration for people who have medical necessary procedures?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
There are in lines 83 through 110. For instance, circumcision, if you have breast cancer, at that age, which happens sometimes, a mastectomy can be performed. Or for people that are born with both sets of genitalia, essentially, that can be corrected.
is it also your understanding that things such as puberty blockers, if medically necessary, would also be allowed?
Yes,
Okay, and the issue is treatment for the purpose of moving toward a surgery to change the sex of an individual. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So it is not the intent of this legislation, nor is the language of this legislation to remove any of those medical considerations, but is to not allow things that lead toward procedures to attempt to change sex. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, are you allowed to drive a car at any age in this state?
No, sir.
I believe it was 15 when I was that age. Is it not 16 now?
I believe so.
Are you allowed to own land in your name before the age of 18 or 21?
You certainly can't sell it.
Are you allowed to
It can be
be,
placed in your name, I think.
are you allowed to be a member of a company, an LLC?
No, sir.
Are you allowed to enter into a contract before the age of 18?
You cannot.
So you can't enter into any contract, to your knowledge, that would be held against the other party before the age of 18.
That's correct.
So if I went down and bought a car and I was under the age of 18 and I signed a finance agreement and I left the lot with that car and drove it and wrecked it or didn't pay for it, there was no recourse against me?
Not unless you have been made an adult, emancipated, in other words.
Okay. Can you buy a pack of cigarettes before you're 21?
I hope not.
Is the reason we don't allow people to buy cigarettes is we worry about their health, or we just don't want people to have cigarettes?
I would think it's public policy to protect the health of the children.
Do we allow you to drink alcohol legally before you're 21?
No, sir.
Why not?
I think it's to protect the health, public safety.
Is it possible that you're not able to make solid decisions at that youthful position that might impair your life or affect your life?
Yes,
And is this bill preventing an adult from making adult decisions when it comes that time?
not even that, not even an 18-year-old could make that decision under this bill.
And this bill does not prevent anyone seeking treatment for counseling, does it?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that you vote against the table motion.
Thank you. Senator Hickman.
Mr. Chairman, can you explain to me section 4 of this bill?
I will certainly try. Section 4 is intended to prohibit public funds provided by the U.S. or state governments to be used to provide gender transition procedures to a person under 18 years of age. Prohibits healthcare facilities owned by the state or by local county or government and physicians employed by the state or local county governments from providing gender transition procedures, and states that amounts paid by an individual or entity for gender transition procedures or as premiums for healthcare coverage that includes coverage for gender transition procedures is not deductible for state income tax purposes.
So it is, I guess my question is the section 4, I guess for lack of better words, the general meat of this bill is section 4. And I'm just getting, so I guess overall, my question is, does this only prohibit public funds from being used to do so? Or
Yes, sir.
does it prohibit the procedures in general?
Yes, and yes,
So it does both.
yes.
I guess my question would be, why would we need to, if you can't do a procedure on someone 18 or younger, why would we need to prohibit the use of funds for doing something that you can't do anyway?
I think it's just being comprehensive.
That's why I didn't understand.
Yes, sir. I understand. All right, back to your motion. Senator Simmons, you're recognized to close on your motion.
And one question before I close,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, is there anywhere in Mississippi that you can actually get this transition service?
You know, I think there are places in Mississippi that do hormone therapies, yes. Because I mean, some of them are medically required and necessary, so by definition, yes.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I ask for support for my motion to table the bill.
All right, Senator Simmons has been recognized, has made a motion to table the bill. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, nay?
No.
The noes appear to have it. The noes have it.
Amendment, Mr. President.
You're recognized for an amendment.
I move to put a reverse appeal in it.
All right. Would you like to explain your amendment or speak on it? And you don't have to. I'm just giving you that option.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just that with the concerns that I guess Senator Wiggins started off expressing, and certainly Senator Barnett, and I know based upon what some of my doctor constituents have called me about, I just think that it is appropriate if we'll put a reverse repeal in it and continue to look at this legislation as it moves through the Senate and back to the House. And to the extent we can, if it can improve the bill, if that's even possible, that we get an opportunity to do that.
All right. Anyone would like to ask a question or speak on that? I would oppose it. Anybody else wants to speak? All right. All in favor of the amendment to add a reverse repealer, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
No.
Believe the noes have it. The noes have it. For a motion, Senator Hill.
Alice Fisher.
Oh, sorry. You're welcome. Recognized, Senator.
I agree with everything the chairman's saying. And my question is, what are we doing? These parents who have responsibility for these children under 18, who make these decisions to do that, how are we holding them responsible?
Well,
Is it in the bill?
if they engage in, assuming this bill becomes law now, of course.
Right.
Under this bill, that person who is by definition aiding and abetting in that, should they find a way to get that done after this becomes law, they could be sued for damages
So, okay.
civilly.
Who would sue? Okay, let's say the parent of the child makes this decision. Because by the way, for any of that to happen, the parent has to sign off on the medical procedure.
Yes.
And that happened. So
Yeah.
who's going to be the one to go and sue the parent for damages?
Anyone can do so.
Anyone. So this is modeling after the Texas law.
Yes, sir.
So Bryce Wiggins can go and sue that person for the person down the street.
You can.
Do that. Okay. What about the attorney general
The Attorney General can also bring the action.
and the district attorney
Yes, sir.
under this bill?
Mhm.
Okay. That Texas provision before the US Supreme Court, aren't they looking at that?
They've upheld it.
They upheld it.
Mhm.
Okay. 'Cause they-
Well, let me say that they heard it. They chose not to strike it down.
Right.
I don't know if that's the same as upholding it, depending on your view, but they have heard it. They've chosen not to strike that down.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Senator Hickman?
Motion file sufficient to pass.
All right, Senator Hickman had a,
Just one quick question.
Sure.
And this was kind of coming out of Senator Wiggins' question.
yes, sir.
So if someone took a child to another state, they could be penalized under this and had one of these procedures performed, could they be penalized under?
No, that's not true. It's not my understanding.
I wasn't asking.
Yeah, that's not my understanding. We only control the laws within the boundaries of the state of Mississippi. Now, parent chooses to go to, New York or wherever they want to go, LA, and do this. That would be controlled by the state of laws in that state.
The aiding and abetting stuck out to me, so I was like, well.
I understand. No, that's not my understanding. No, sir. All right, any other questions? Good ones all around. All right, Senator Hill, I'm sorry.
Motion file sufficient to pass.
For the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? I believe the ayes have it. The ayes have it. A division? Yeah, you want one? Okay. You're welcome to. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being. Yeah. It's just the house one, I don't know.
I mean, did you look at it?
Because it's the house.
I mean, next time talking about college.